Chapter 471, Meeting Again at the Ancient Desolate Tower. The Azure Dragon martial spirit has not been seen for 1,000 years. It is very mysterious. However, this old man, coincidentally, understands a little about it. If you, little friend, are willing to tell me the truth about it, this old man will definitely keep quiet about it. Xiao Chen shook his head and said, Senior is overthinking this. This so-called dragon chi is merely a special manifestation of my martial technique. I do not have the Azure Dragon martial spirit. If you do not believe me, you can check for yourself. Luo Chen looked at Xiao Chen's. The latter's calm expression stirred his heart. Could it be that he truly does not have the Azure Dragon martial spirit? Xiao Chen got up and said, If there is nothing else I can help you with, I will take my leave first. The spirit tea had not even cooled yet. Luo Chen watched Xiao Chen leave, deep in thought. Luo Chen genuinely did not have any bad intentions. If the Azure Dragon martial spirit truly appeared, it would throw the many powers of the continent into chaos. By then, the Thousand-Sword Pavilion would not be able to avoid being dragged into the fight. If Luo Chen could end the relationship with Xiao Chen in advance, when such a change occurred, the Thousand-Sword Pavilion would have a much easier time. However, judging by what had happened today, it seemed like Luo Chen had overthought this. How many secrets does the Azure Dragon martial spirit have exactly? Xiao Chen looked up to the sky after he exited the pavilion. His eyes filled with doubt. Sooner or later, this secret will be revealed. Never mind, I will deal with it when the time comes. The most important thing now is to increase my strength. Xiao Chen took a deep breath and stopped thinking about this matter. Then, he went out with Xiao Ru and Xia Xian, who had waited for him for quite a while. The scenery of Desolate City was very unique, so Xiao Chen followed the two girls to look around. Xiao Chen put down his emotional baggage and stopped thinking about everything. He completely relaxed his body. Under Xiao Ru's instigation, he even agreed to pay for the two. Thus, the two girls instantly started shopping happily, spending money like water. They immediately bought anything they found interesting. How much is this hairpin? 300 inferior grade spirit stones. That is very cheap. Senior sister, let's get one each. The workmanship of this flowery skirt is very exquisite. How much is it? 500 inferior grade spirit stones. That's very cheap. Give me 2 of each of the 4 colors. When words like this came out of Xiao Ru's mouth, the smile on Xiao Chen's face started to turn stiff. Sorry, I'm feeling a little stomach discomfort. You two continue shopping, I will go back first. At this rate, no matter how many spirit stones Xiao Chen had, he would definitely go broke. He put on a pained expression and found an excuse to quickly flee. When Xia Xian saw the situation, she could not help but laugh. She thought back to how his expression did not change when facing the outstanding talents of the various nations, and how he did not seem to be afraid of them. Unexpectedly, he was so scared of Xiao Ru that he had to pretend to have a stomachache and flee. Xiao Ru felt suspicious and said, Hey, why is your stomach hurting suddenly? I still have several things that I have not bought yet. If Xiao Chen had not left and heard this, he would be frustrated to the point of vomiting blood if he heard this. Early the next morning, when the rays of the morning sun shined on the ground, Xia Xian and Xiao Chen went out together and headed for the Tianwu Plaza in the city. When they arrived there, many cultivators had already gathered in the surroundings. However, because they were not contestants, they could not get in. They all looked in curiously. Xia Xian stopped walking and sighed. What must have come, did eventually come. Let's meet again at the ancient desolate tower. Xia Xian could not guarantee that she would get one of the 20 spots. When she said this, it was actually to encourage herself. Xiao Chen nodded and said, See you at the ancient desolate tower. Xiao Chen is here. Even Xie Ziwen was not his match. If we get him as our opponent, what should we do? Just admit defeat, what else can you do? We already know that we will lose against him. If we still fought, we might not even be able to fight the next match. Although there are 20 spots for the ancient desolate tower, in my opinion, it is actually just 19. This Xiao Chen is guaranteed a spot. Under the Tianwu Emperor's statue, the cultivators who had arrived earlier all sighed upon seeing Xiao Chen. To them, someone like Xiao Chen participating in the matches was a tragedy. They could only pray that they would not draw him as an opponent. Xiao Chen, however, did not bother with these people. After he wished Sha Xian good luck, he joined the crowd and quietly waited for Shi Hailong and the others. He did not have to wait for too long, as a group of cultivators wearing robes with the Heavenly Extermination Union's logo embroidered on them landed on the platform. The one leading them was the one they had seen on the first day, Shi Hailong. Shi Hailong swept his gaze through the 200-odd cultivators and said to a person beside, "Go and count the number of people. If we are missing anyone, we will wait for 15 minutes. If everyone is here, we will start immediately." That person immediately followed Shi Hailong's order. He took out a name list and started taking the attendance. After he made sure that everyone was present, he flew back onto the platform and said, "All 276 people have arrived." Shi Hailong nodded and said, "Very good. We shall start drawing the first round of lots." 4 black boxes had been already prepared on the platform since long ago. The boxes all had a round hole, only big enough for an arm to enter. Under the directions of the Heavenly Extermination Union, Xiao Chen followed the crowd and stepped forward. He drew out a red wooden token from one of the wooden boxes. The number 18 was written on the wooden token with black ink. After all the lots were drawn, Shi Hailong said in a deep voice, "Number 1 to 18, please go up the arena. Those with the red wooden token will go up first. After that, hang your token on the arena. The people with the blue token then have to find their corresponding number and the match will start." The rules were very simple, and the opponent was decided by luck. Xiao Chen approved of such rules. Under such rules, fighting 30 matches in 2 days allowed them to fully display their strength. Coincidentally, Xiao Chen was number 18. The moment Shi Hailong spoke, he immediately leapt onto an arena and hung his token. After a while, a great Chu Nation cultivator with an extremely unsightly expression trudged up to Xiao Chen's arena. "My luck is really bad. I actually ended up drawing this monster fast my first opponent," that person muttered. He glanced at Xiao Chen, but could not muster up any fighting spirit. The two went to their positions, bowed to each other and started preparing to fight. The two's aura clashed in the air. The great Chu Nation cultivator looked at Xiao Chen's calm expression and thought back to the rumors about him. He had seen Xiao Chen's fight with Zuo Mo and Xie Ziwen for himself. Thus, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that he was not a match for Xiao Chen at all. As Xiao Chen prepared to make a move, he sighed helplessly and said, "Let's stop. I admit defeat." All the 200-odd contestants here were outstanding talents from various places, who had cleared the first round of selections. All of them were proud and arrogant. In other words, making them admit defeat before they even fought was very difficult. They would hesitate a lot and would feel bad for not putting up a fight. However, against someone as strong as Xiao Chen, they did not have any confidence of fighting. They were afraid of injuring their essence and increasing the burden on themselves, which would be a great disadvantage in their next match. Thus, it was in their best interest to just helplessly admit defeat. After all, getting a spot in the ancient desolate tower was more important. They had to put down their pride and avoid being put in a disadvantageous position for the next match. Xiao Chen helplessly shook his head and left the arena. He did not approve of his opponent giving up on the match. If it were Xiao Chen, no matter how strong the opponent was, he would at least give it a try. If he ran in fear and did not fight, it would have a great impact on the sharpness in his heart. If this continued over a long period, this sharpness would completely disappear. This could lead to not being able to raise one's cultivation or combat prowess in the future. Cultivators were not afraid of defeat, they were afraid of losing the sharpness in their heart. The first round of drawing lots ended and the second round began. However, it disappointed Xiao Chen once again. His opponent gave up without a fight again. This continued until the fifth round when Xiao Chen finally managed to draw someone willing to fight him. This person was none other than the Myriad Fiend Palace's Zhang Zimo. He looked at Xiao Chen and said, "How unlucky, I ended up drawing you. Let's just fight until victory is clear, there is no need to spoil our friendship over this." Xiao Chen smiled slightly and said, "This is exactly what I hoped for. Please, make your move." Zhang Zimo nodded and said, "Sorry for the offense." Hu Kai. Zhang Zimo pushed off the ground and sent an intense palm wind at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen knew that his cultivation technique was very strange and that he would be attacking at full strength from the start. If Xiao Chen held back too much and gave him the momentum, it would be hard to recover from that. Thus, he drew the lunar shadow saber at lightning speed. Bang! The surging palm wind clashed with the saber chi. Their power exploded out, sending horrifying shockwaves into the surroundings. Zhang Zimo sent out 3 palm strikes, using his full power. He shattered all of Xiao Chen's saber chi and was even about to reach him. When someone who uses bare-handed techniques fights a bladesman, they would be at a disadvantage. The length of the weapon gives the user a certain advantage. However, when a close combat master gets close, the weapon becomes useless and the advantage shifts to the other party. Xiao Chen naturally understood this principle. He kept moving and brandished his saber continuously. He executed all sorts of martial techniques to prevent his opponent from getting close. The two figures moved around the arena quickly. They both executed exquisite movement techniques, and it was not long before they exchanged dozens of moves. They were very cautious as they attacked and retreated. The match slowly entered a stalemate. Only Zhang Zimo would dare to not admit defeat when facing Xiao Chen. Just thinking about it makes me feel upset. After roaming the world for more than a decade, I have never admitted defeat to someone of the same generation. However, when I encountered Xiao Chen, I didn't even have the courage to fight. I was the same as well. The moment I saw him, I thought of his fight with Xie Ziwen. You all know how strong Xie Ziwen is. In the end, Xiao Chen still defeated him. How could I dare fight him? Just pray that you do not draw Xiao Chen as an opponent. Even if I draw Zuo Mo, I will just take the initiative and admit defeat. The crowd watched Xiao Chen and Zhang Zimo fight. They were amazed by Xiao Chen's strength and full of respect for Zhang Zimo's courage. Zhang Zimo clearly knew that he did not have much hope, but he still fought. Thus, when the spectators thought about themselves and how far from him they were, they could only sigh helplessly. The fight continued for about an hour. Xiao Chen slowly discovered some problems. He seemed to be falling for Zhang Zimo's fighting method. From the very start, Xiao Chen had been fighting at full power. Although he had a lot of essence, he did not have that strange cultivation technique of Zhang Zimo. He would not be able to last as long as Zhang Zimo could. If this went on, the one with the last laugh would be Zhang Zimo. Xiao Chen was quick to react it, so he rapidly started searching for a countermeasure. After another few dozen exchanges, Xiao Chen made a decision and gambled on it. He used an arc light to force his opponent back. Then, he stuck his saber into the ground. He circulated his vital chi into his left arm, and an azure light started to gather around it. Then, he quickly dashed forward. Been getting a couple of comments about this. For those who are not aware, the blurred chapter titles can be revealed by hovering your mouse over it, clicking it, or tapping on it for those on mobile. Kai. Xiao Chen dragged his saber along the ground, creating countless sparks as he rushed directly at Zhang Zimo. He did not dodge or flee from the palm strike that Zhang Zimo had sent towards his chest. He did not even have any intention of pulling back. It looked like he was intending to let Zhang Zimo hit him. What is he doing? He left his chest open. This one palm strike will decide the victor if this continues. When the watching contestants saw this, they could not understand what was going on. Zhang Zimo's expression changed slightly. The moment he landed his palm strike, he pushed off the ground and quickly retreated, leaving afterimages in the air. He kept retreating until he reached the edge of the arena. There, he scattered his martial technique and smiled bitterly. "You win, I admit defeat." What is going on? After Zhang Zimo landed that palm strike, he was the one who should have won. Why did he admit defeat for no reason? I cannot understand what is going on. I don't understand what is going on either. Can someone explain it? How did Xiao Chen end up winning? This is too strange. When the people below saw Zhang Zimo surrendering, they could not understand what had happened even after thinking about it for a long time. Up on the platform, Shi Heilong nodded with a knowing smile on his face. The old men beside him were also nodding as well. There were some things that could not be seen before one reached a certain cultivation realm. Shi Heilong said softly, "These two youths, one had the guts to stake everything on a gamble and the other knows when to retreat or advance, not seeking victory at all cost. This is probably what makes them stand out from so many geniuses." An old man at the side nodded and said, "In terms of technique, they are about equal. Xiao Chen's saber techniques and Zhang Zimo's palm techniques are not able to overcome each other. In order to obtain victory, they could only rely on something else aside from techniques. They had to use their brain and their unique advantages to tilt the fight in their favor." Another person continued, "Zhang Zimo's speciality is his long-lasting combat prowess. Thus he needs to drag out the fight. When his opponent's essence is drying up, he can use a strong move to secure the victory. Xiao Chen's specialty is his strong physical body and his strong explosive essence. However, if he kept fighting, he would have exhausted too much essence. Thus, he had to resort to a situation where both parties got injured, forcing them to decide the victory in one move. Even if he got injured heavily, it would not matter." Shi Heilong laughed gently and said, "They are both talents. I really look forward to find out how far they can climb in the ancient desolate tower. Perhaps we will be astonished by them." The crowd below was dumbfounded when the martial monarch experts on the platform explained the seemingly simple battle. They did not expect the apparently ordinary moves to have so much meaning behind them. They all felt enlightened and went deep into thoughts. Xiao Chen scattered the azure dragon chi on his left hand. He looked at the retreating Zhang Zimo and said, "Actually, you could have gambled on it too. After being severely injured, my body would have been weak. You might have been able to defeat me." Zhang Zimo shook his head and smiled, "You don't have to be so humble. Without being 70% confident, I will not gamble on it. You win this round. Let's see who can climb higher in the ancient desolate tower then." Geniuses are naturally self-confident. Although Zhang Zimo had been defeated here, he was confident that he would be getting one of the 20 spots. Xiao Chen nodded and said, "In that case, see you at the ancient desolate tower." The arena battles continued. Xiao Chen felt helpless. Aside from Zhang Zimo, the following opponents surrendered the moment they went up the arena. When the 15th round of drawing lots ended, Xiao Chen drew the number 8 blue token. When he walked to the arena with the number 8 red token hanging on it, he discovered that his opponent was a rather interesting person. It was the Holy Fire Manor's young Manor Lord, Leng Yun, the person who Xiao Chen snatched the extreme Yin Flame's origin flame from. When Leng Yun saw Xiao Chen leap up to the arena, the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. He clenched his fists tightly and nearly let out his killing chi. However, he calmed himself, and his expression reverted to normal. He said, "I am not a match for you, I admit defeat." However, Xiao Chen did not wish to let him off so easily. He smiled faintly and said, "Why do you admit defeat? Don't you want your origin flame back?" Leng Yun, who was originally preparing to leave the arena, froze when he heard this. The anger that he had been suppressing in his heart burst out. He clenched his fist and cracking sounds came from them. The origin flame of the extreme yin flame was something that he had spent 10 years to bitterly cultivate. It had only barely reached the size of a baby's fist when it was snatched away by Xiao Chen. Taking away his flame was even worse than killing him. Leng Yun closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths. He said in a frosty voice, "Never mind, you can keep it first. I will take it back in the future with interest added." Xiao Chen frowned slightly as he watched Leng Yun leave. This fellow has a really stable state of mind. Even after being provoked by me, he could still regain his calm and avoid acting rashly. Thus, Xiao Chen's plan of crippling him openly in the arena went as quickly as it came. The matches soon came to an end. Xiao Chen returned to the Tianwu Emperor's statue and watched the others fight. This Chu Chaoyun is really low-key. Without causing any commotion, he unexpectedly won 15 consecutive matches. Even Pei Xiaoxuan was defeated by him. The most important thing is that we still have not seen him draw the sword on his back. Unexpectedly, the Great Qin nation has another powerful person aside from Xiao Chen. We have underestimated them in the past. That Duan Muqing seems to have won at least 10 of her matches. His strength cannot be underestimated either. Those whose turn had not arrived yet or those who had already ended their fights watched the people fighting and discussed animatedly. Suddenly, a thought struck Xiao Chen. He followed the crowd's gaze. In the arena, Chu Chaoyun was facing a swordsman from the Great Chu nation. Chu Chaoyun had a sword on his back, and his expression was as carefree as before. This expression of his did not seem to be made on purpose but was instead something natural. Chu Chaoyun looked like a very carefree person. This expression suited him perfectly. After not seeing Chu Chaoyun for half a year, Xiao Chen thought he still looked exactly the same as when he first saw him. Xiao Chen never doubted Chu Chaoyun's strength. Even though he had improved rapidly and had defeated countless geniuses from various places, he still found Chu Chaoyun unfathomable. Chu Chaoyun was like a deep and old well. The further one explored, the deeper they found it to be. He won again. This fellow already has 15 consecutive victories. Like Zuo Mo, Xiao Chen, and the others, he has not lost even a single match. He really is a dark horse. How astonishing. Chu Chaoyun's match ended. He had put in some effort and defeated the swordsman from the Great Chu nation. After the match, he just silently left the arena. After that day, no one would dare underestimate Chu Chaoyun anymore. Even the looks that Zhang Zimo, Sha Xian, and the others who stood at the peak gave him changed. Night fell, and the first day of the arena battles ended. Some rejoiced and some despaired. Those who were lucky and managed to draw people who were weak were very happy. They managed to finish off their opponents and gain victory in most of their matches. Those who were unlucky were bitter. They had met with cultivators like Zuo Mo in many of their matches. This resulted in them being defeated most of the time and ranking at the bottom. Of course, these were just the minority of people. Most people were neither lucky nor unlucky. They had both strong and weak opponents and arrived at where they were by relying only on their own strength. Shi Hailong stood on the platform and shouted, "Don't leave. We will spend the night here. When the results are out tomorrow, we will immediately leave for the ancient desolate tower. We need to activate the ancient desolate tower before dusk." When everyone heard this, there had no objections. It was merely a night at the plaza. It was not difficult for them to bear with this much. Everyone found a spot and sat down cross-legged. They regulated their auras or cultivated. Xiao Chen found a comparatively desolate place and did not hesitate to sit down. Then, he closed his eyes and started cultivating. The next morning, the morning sun shined on the cultivators sitting in the plaza. All of them opened their eyes and got up to stretch their bodies, preparing themselves for another day of battles. The first round of drawing lots started. Xiao Chen drew the number 23 red wooden token. After the first 18 groups of contestants finished their match, he went up to an arena and hung his token up. Then he waited for his opponent to arrive. He hoped that his next opponent would not give up before the fight started. If that happened again, then there would be no point to this. He felt helpless at the thought of it. Shoo! Just as Xiao Chen was muttering to himself, a familiar figure leapt up onto the arena. That person looked at Xiao Chen indifferently and said, "I am pretty unlucky. Unexpectedly, I have drawn the terrifying white-robed bladesman." Xiao Chen squinted and looked at this person with a serious expression. Chu Chaoyun. Chu Chaoyun smiled indifferently. "Let's not bother talking about old times. Like before, let's decide this with one move." Xiao Chen placed his right hand on his saber hilt and said, "Sure, I am curious as to whether your sword is still as sharp as before or not." The two stood 100 meters apart and stared at each other with a serious expression. They continuously gathered their aura as their gazes clashed in midair. It looked like a saber and a sword clashing. One could even hear faint clanging sounds. Suddenly, a swift wind swirled around the arena. It made their clothes and hair flutter. Unknowingly, Chu Chaoyun's right hand had already reached his sword hilt. The carefree look on Chu Chaoyun's handsome face slowly faded away. Instead, a serious expression appeared in its place. Xiao Chen's looked cautious as well. As their auras gathered and clashed, he started to circulate and merge his state of thunder and state of massacre. Xiao Chen had never had the confidence to beat Chu Chaoyun, even in the past. The first time they had clashed, he was sorely defeated by the other party. The second time they fought had been at the remnants of the Fire Li sect branch in Ink Forest. The fight ended halfway as a result of interference from the others. Since Xiao Chen had debuted, he managed to surpass those who had bullied or defeated him in the past. Then, Xiao Chen put such a huge distance between him and them that defeating him ever again became an uncrossable chasm which they could never surpass. Only Chu Chaoyun remained unfathomable to Xiao Chen. Even though Xiao Chen had countless fortuitous encounters and spent all his time cultivating, he did not seem to be able to make out his exact strength. However, Xiao Chen did not fear challenges. Long ago, when he was only a martial master, he had already dared to fight Chu Chaoyun. Now that the distance had become smaller, why not fight again? He was no longer the Xiao Chen of the past. As all these thoughts flashed through Xiao Chen's mind, and his gaze became sharper. His gaze seemed to have become solid and sharp, like a saber's edge. Look, Chu Chaoyun is going to draw his sword. Not many people paid attention to the arena Xiao Chen was on as the matches there were too boring. His opponents always surrendered before the fight even began. However, the moment Xiao Chen drew an opponent that was of equal standing, his arena attracted everyone's attention. In the first round of selection, Chu Chaoyun obtained 60 consecutive victories before taking the initiative to surrender for the rest of the matches. During those 60 matches, he had never drawn his sword. However, at that time, Chu Chaoyun was in the same wrestling ring as Zuo Mo. Zuo Mo overshadowed him, so no one paid too much attention to him. However, in the second round of selection, Chu Chaoyun did not suffer any defeat in the 15 matches of the first day. Furthermore, just like in the first round of selection, he did not draw his sword. Even when facing Pei Xiaoxuan, he still refrained from drawing his sword. The sword seemed to be a mere decoration. The more times this happened, the more curious the crowd became. They wanted to see how he would fight Xiao Chen. They were both from the great Qin nation. In addition, the crowd wanted to see how strong Chu Chaoyun was with his sword drawn. Amidst the crowd, Hua Yunfei and the others were watching Xiao Chen and Chu Chaoyun. They watched them speechless and felt very bitter in their heart. It was not too long ago that these two people were about as strong as them. Then, Xiao Chen alone managed to defeat all of them as a group. Who knew that somebody like Chu Chaoyun would appear as well? Now that such an outstanding talent appeared from the great Qin nation as well, the frustration in their hearts was easy to imagine. Up in the arena, the auras of the two intensely clashed with each other. A strong wind started to blow, spreading to the outside of the arena. The wind kicked up the dust and creating a cloud, hiding the arena from the crowd. The spectators could not help but squint and try to see through it. Shoo! The surging wind suddenly came to a stop. The sound of two weapons rang out. Chu Chaoyun and Xiao Chen had made a move at the same time. The crowd only saw a golden light filling the air behind Chu Chaoyun. The light was resplendent and dazzling. It was so piercing that the crowd's eyes hurt. State of light. The state Chu Chaoyun has comprehended is unexpectedly the state of light, the strongest of all states. The onlookers were all shocked. Shoo! An even brighter sword light appeared within the golden light. The sword light shot out, and a vast sword intent rushed towards Xiao Chen at lightning speed. The instant the light appeared, the state of thunder and state of massacre that Xiao Chen had been suppressing immediately burst out. A purple light behind them spread out and electric sparks flickered amidst it. When infused with the state of massacre, the scarlet and purple lights alternated. Bang! 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 The two started to compete with their states. The incredibly resplendent golden light clashed with the extremely strange purple and scarlet light. Intense explosions rang out around them. The stone tiles covering the arena cracked and pieces of flooring floated in midair. Shoo! Two figures flashed on the chaotic arena. They moved so fast that the crowd could not follow their movements. The scene seemed very chaotic. Lights of many colors flickered, and countless pieces of shattered stone flooring flew everywhere. The crowd simply could not see how did this happen. Who see? Two mouthfuls of blood shot into the air and splattered onto the ground, dyeing it red. However, no one could figure out whose blood it was. Even Zhang Zimo and the others were not capable of doing so. The speed of the two attacking with all their might was simply too fast. The many colored lights and the different states intermingled on the arena. There was no way to see clearly. In two opposite corners of the arena, Xiao Chen and Chu Chaoyun stood with their backs facing each other. Blood slowly dripped down from both the saber and the sword. Is it a draw? The crowd below wondered. The weapons were stained with blood. That meant that they had struck each other simultaneously. The two mouthfuls of blood seemed to have also come from both of them. It was too fast, I could not see it clearly. Unexpectedly, they managed to end up in a draw. The scene was very chaotic. I could not see their attacks at all. The result seemed to be decided. Thus, the onlookers shook their heads and sighed. The fight had been too fast. Although it had been a breathtaking fight, they could not understand what had happened. Shoo! Just then, Xiao Chen and Chu Chaoyun turned around at the same time. Even though the fight seemed to have ended, the golden light and the alternating purple and red light quickly poured into their weapons. The spectators were flabbergasted. They muttered, "Is the fight not over yet? Have they not made their move yet, despite such a big commotion?" Chu Chaoyun's sword left his hand and hovered in midair. Then, it started spinning. He quickly and continuously made hand seals. As more hand seals were made, his fair hands started to glow with a golden light. Xiao Chen stayed expressionless. He used his lunar shadow saber to direct a strange energy. Dark clouds started churning in the sky and thunder rumbled. When the golden light reached its brightest, Chu Chaoyun separated his hands. The flickering golden light on his left hand looked like a mirror. He then moved the light around his sword, forming a circle. Kai! Kai! As Chu Chaoyun's hand moved, a golden sword light appeared. When the circle was completed, a halo of sword light appeared around the sword. Life-extinguishing blood-reversing swordplay. Chu Chaoyun shouted. The instant the circle of sword light formed, he grabbed the spinning sword with his right hand and struck the ground with it. The sword instantly turned into a golden light and carrying the aura of extermination flew directly at Xiao Chen. Its trail did not fade. Instead, it formed a long and thin beam of light. Xiao Chen pointed to the sky with his saber. His strongest move, the Wukui moves heaven, formed instantly. Boom, boom, boom. The sky shook and a scarlet divine Wukui tree carrying the supreme might of thunder descended. Countless scarlet bolts of lightning appeared amidst the clouds. This Wukui moves heaven had been infused with the state of massacre. Aside from being very tyrannical, it also seemed very strange. Bang! The divine scarlet Wukui tree landed before Xiao Chen. He waved his hand and the divine tree crashed towards the golden beam of light. Ka-ca. The radiant sword of golden light and the scarlet divine Wukui tree rushed towards each other in the arena. A crunching sound resounded and the sword went through the divine tree, leaving a hole in the trunk. Cracks extended from the hole and covered the divine Wukui tree. It seemed to be about to collapse. The sword radiating golden light did not go undamaged either. Its originally resplendent and dazzling light became much dimmer. However, the speed of the two did not change, only their might decreased by half. Dang! Bang! Two intense sounds rang out. Chu Chaoyun smashed into the divine tree flying at him with both his palms. The state of thunder and state of massacre exploded out. They turned into an overwhelming scarlet shockwave which headed for Chu Chaoyun. On the other side, the sword that had already dimmed arrived in front of Xiao Chen, just as Chu Chaoyun clashed with the divine Wukui tree. Xiao Chen adjusted his stance and raised his saber. When he blocked the tip of the sword, a surging energy burst forth from it. Boom! The two stepped on air. They had been both struck out of the arena by their opponent's martial technique and landed on the ground. Blood trickled down from their lips. According to the rules, once they fell out of the arena, they would automatically lose. However, the two had fallen onto the ground at the same time. Thus, it was a draw. Chu Chaoyun withdrew his palm and sheathed his sword, returning it to his back. After not meeting for half a year, you are already able to force me into such a state. I hope that you will continue to be as lucky after half a year. Chu Chaoyun wiped off the blood at the corner of his lips. He ignored the astonished looks of the crowd and walked to the side. Then, he closed his eyes and started recuperating. Xiao Chen muttered to himself for a while. He did not have a dispirited expression. Although he had not managed to defeat his opponent, he had figured out the limits of his opponent's strength. He was not afraid of a strong opponent, but he was afraid of an unfathomable one which he could not understand at all. Having an opponent like Chu Chaoyun on the path of cultivation was not a bad thing for Xiao Chen. It would even make his life more exciting. Wow! The great Qin nation managed to groom out two absolute geniuses like them. How unbelievable! I mean, that is a place that is lacking in spiritual energy. Given the existence of these two, no one will dare to say anything about the great Qin nation cultivators in the future. The crowd looked at the two, who were sitting cross-legged and recuperating, and discussed them in soft voices. Xiao Chen's strength was clear for all to see. Now that Chu Chaoyun had obtained a draw against him, everyone acknowledged his strength as well. The arena matches continued. Soon, the second round of drawing lots began. Xiao Chen drew the number 17 red token, becoming part of the first batch of contestants to fight. Xiao Chen's opponent was a cultivator from the Great Sha Nation. That person knew that he had suffered from significant internal injuries in his fight with Chu Chaoyun. Thus, it would be impossible for Xiao Chen to recover so quickly. After hesitating for a moment, that person chose to fight. He wanted to see if he could obtain victory. Even if that person could not win, he would be willing to accept a draw. That would at least get him 1 point. However, the results disappointed him. Xiao Chen had just taken the healing medicinal pill that Shi Heilong gave him. Its effects were very good and exceeded everyone's expectations. The internal injuries caused by Chu Chaoyun had already mostly recovered. While it could not be said that he had completely recovered his combat prowess, he had at least recovered 90% of it. Bang! 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 After 10 moves, Xiao Chen forced back his opponent with his saber. He pressed forward and used the dragon claw fist to toss his opponent off the arena. Thank you for going easy. Despite the other party's depressed expression, Xiao Chen walked off the arena calmly. The arena matches continued batch after batch. There were a few more people who chose to try their luck and fight Xiao Chen. Nothing unexpected happened. Everyone lost to him within 50 moves. When everyone saw how the strong combat prowess he displayed was, the following opponents came to the conclusion that his wounds have recovered. Thus, when they drew him as an opponent, they immediately gave up without hesitation. There were fewer and fewer matches left, so there was no more room for mistakes. As the sun set and dusk approached, Xiao Chen entered the arena feeling bored. This was the final match of his 30 matches. The results of the earlier 29 matches already guaranteed him one of the 20 spots. The result of this final match did not make a difference for him at all. It did not matter whether he won or lost, he would be able to enter the ancient desolate tower anyway. Shoo. After a short wait, Xiao Chen's final opponent showed up. When he saw who it was, his eyes could not help but brighten. He did not expect his final opponent to be Zuo Mo. It looked like this match would not be as simple as he imagined. Things had just become interesting. Zuo Mo, on the other hand, had a slightly bitter smile on his face as he stood across him. He said, "I know that you will find this boring, but I will be forfeiting. I already have enough points to rank in the top 20. There is no need for me to fight a pointless battle. See you in the ancient desolate tower." Xiao Chen smiled. "Now, it has become somewhat difficult for me to find a fight. See you in the ancient desolate tower then. Let's consider this a draw. After all, we have not figured out a victory between you and me yet. Sooner or later, we will have to fight each other." Zuo Mo nodded and said, "There is still 1.5 years until the next 5-nation youth competition. At that time, we will definitely meet. We can fight to our heart's content then." The two shook hands and agreed before walking off the arena together. Then, they started to watch the other fights, waiting for the second round of selections to come to an end. When the matches finally ended, Xia Xian walked over to Xiao Chen with a smile on her face. Clearly, she was very confident in her results. "How did it go? There should be no problems, right?" Xiao Chen asked. Xia Xian nodded and said, "I lost 2 rounds and had 1 draw. There should not be any problems. However, I will still have to see the final results." After that, the final match on the arena came to an end. All the contestants anxiously waited in anticipation. The Heavenly Extermination Union had a person who specially tracked the results of the contestants. Furthermore, they had invited leaders of the various powers to monitor the fights. Thus, they could guarantee the absolute fairness of the final results. The results were quickly tabulated. After Shi Heilong and the others saw it, they instructed someone to start reading it out. The results are out. The first is Chu Chaoyun. In his 30 matches, he has 1 draw and victories for the rest, with a total of 59 points. The second is Xiao Chen. He has 2 draws and victories for the rest. He has a total of 58 points. The third is Ding Fengqiu. He has 3 draws and victories for the rest, totaling 57 points. The fourth is Zhang Zimo. Nothing unexpected happened. Aside from Chu Chaoyun, the other top then were the people who stood at the top of the previous gathering: Zhang Zimo, Mu Xinya, Zuo Mo, Chu Mu, Ding Fengqiu, Xia Xian, and the others. At this point, everyone still had calm expressions. After the top 10 names had been read out and all the top geniuses got a spot, the rest started to become nervous. It was now their turn. In fact, for the rest of the crowd, the 20 spots were only 10 spots. Those were all they could compete for, given the strength of the top geniuses. When the old man finished reading out the list, Shi Hailong said with a serious expression, "Those whose names have been not read out, step back. Those who have been called out, please step forward." The outstanding talents that had not get a spot all had very disappointed looks on their faces. They sighed and stepped back. They looked enviously at Xiao Chen and the others who had stepped forward and had extremely unsatisfied looks in their eyes. They knew that this act of them stepping forward or backward meant that the distance between them and these people would become something they could never catch up with. Shi Hailong swept his gaze through the crowd. Then he flicked his finger and a jade pendant with mysterious talisman inscriptions fell into the hands of the top 20. "You will not be able to enter the ancient desolate tower without this jade pendant. I have already given you the opportunity. As for how far you can go, that will depend on yourselves," Shi Hailong said expressionlessly in a deep voice. "Open the tower," Shi Hailong ordered, and the 4 old men behind him went in front of the Tianwu Emperor's sculpture and made hand seals. A pure essence came from the 4 old men and slowly infused into the sculpture. The Tianwu Emperor sculpture started glowing with a golden light from bottom to top. When the golden light completely covered the sculpture, a boundless sword chi rushed out from the sword in the Tianwu Emperor's hand. Wang, wang. A humongous and grand formation appeared in the sky. Countless lines formed a profound image. The golden sword light rushed into the formation. When the sword chi reached the formation center, it slowly spread out and all the lines turned golden. The golden light shined down and an inverted image of the formation shined on the plaza. It was a huge ancient formation. When everyone, including Xiao Chen, felt the vast spiritual energy of the formation, they were astonished. At this moment, they felt very small. In the distance, where Xiao Chen had once seen the ancient tower, the buildings vanished one by one. The ancient desolate tower now appeared before everyone, astonishing them even more. The ancient desolate tower turned out to be within the Tianwu Plaza. However, due to some formations creating an illusion, no one could find its real location. Boom! The lower doors of the ancient desolate tower opened. Shi Hailong said in a deep voice, "Enter." When the tower appeared, Xiao Chen and the others placed the jade pendant around their chest and immediately headed to the entrance of the first floor. Although the doors were open, there was a membrane of light blue energy flickering with a dim blue light around them. Kai, Kai. 4 or 5 impatient people rushed in front of the ground and entered. When their hands touched the membrane, the jade pendant with the mysterious talisman scripts immediately lit up, and they passed through. It seemed that the blue energy membrane had the ability to differentiate those with the jade pendant from those who tried to barge in forcefully without one. Xiao Chen was not in a rush to enter the ancient desolate tower. He stood outside and looked at the tower. The tower had 9 floors and was more than 400 meters tall. Spiritual energy revolved around the foot of the tower, forming an overwhelming aura. Just by standing at its feet, one could feel an ancient and vast aura creating a strong pressure. In the past, the Thunder Emperor only managed to go to the 7th floor. For so many people to be so nervous about it and be filled with anticipation, what exactly is in this ancient desolate tower? I wonder how many floors I will be able to climb up. Xiao Chen took a deep breath. He walked to the energy membrane and stretched his right hand out. Shoo! Xiao Chen's figure trembled and he felt like he was going through a waterfall. Then, he appeared on the first floor of the ancient desolate tower. Boom! Just as Xiao Chen landed on the ground, he felt a huge pressure crushing down on him. It was a formless pressure that came from the air, pressing heavily on Xiao Chen's shoulders like a pair of huge hands. It felt like his entire body was pushed down. Xiao Chen got caught off guard and fell to one knee. The pressure nearly pushed him to the ground. After Xiao Chen reacted to it, he circulated his vital qi around his body. He straightened his back and allowed that pressure flow onto him. However, he remained motionless. This pressure is not that strong, Xiao Chen thought to himself. As long as I am not pressed to the ground immediately, it is quite easy to resist. Xiao Chen looked up. The first floor was very vast. There were carvings of many people on the wall, staring at the people who came to challenge the ancient desolate tower. Xiao Chen continued looking further up. He saw a barrier of light separating the first and second floor like a ceiling. Several cultivators flew into the air, fighting the pressure. They slowly moved towards the light barrier above them. The barrier was at a height that they would normally be able to cover in a couple of breaths. However, it now felt extremely difficult to move even 1 meter. The air felt very dense and sticky, ruthlessly pressing down on them. Can anyone help me up? Xiao Chen saw an unfortunate fellow about a meter in front. He was pressed flat on the ground, trying to push himself off the ground with his hands. He tried to stand up, but could not even after a long time. His only option was to call out for help. The pressure in the first layer was not so great that it could not be resisted. However, if one let down their guard at the very start, they would be pressed flat on the ground. It would be very difficult to rely on their own strength to stand up again. The surrounding cultivators were all climbing up nervously. No one cared about him at all. Even if they heard him, they just ignored him. All of them were competitors here. It was hard to say whether if they helped him, he might end up becoming stronger than them. Xiao Chen shook his head. It is not easy to enter this ancient desolate tower. It would definitely be unfortunate if one gave up here. Bang! Xiao Chen stomped heavily on the ground and pushed off the ground with a huge force. He used his force to slowly fly up. The cultivator laying flat on the ground also used this force to get up to a bow. He looked at Xiao Chen, who was in the air, and quickly thanked him. Who? Xiao Chen broke through the seemingly solid pressure and slowly rose up. At first, he moved rather slowly. Then, he got used to it. Xiao Chen gradually moved faster. He passed the cultivators that were there before him and arrived at the front. Is this fellow not feeling any pressure at all? Ding Fengqiu said with a somewhat unsightly expression when he saw Xiao Chen overtaking him. Zhuo Mo revealed an astonished expression as well. The pressure here made the circulation of essence very slow. He did not understand how Xiao Chen managed to do this. When the rest of them saw that Xiao Chen was about to touch the light barrier above them, they were all astonished. However, they were unable to speed up. After thinking for a while, he realized why. The pressure in the tower acted upon the body first, before seeping inside and pressuring the essence directly. At this moment, the physical body was like the first line of defense. With a strong physical body, the amount of pressure seeping into the body would naturally be less. If the physical body were weak, the amount of pressure it could hold back would be less. This resulted in most of the pressure seeping into the body. Xiao Chen's physical body was much stronger than most cultivators. Being able to reach the front, despite being the last to leave, was natural for him. When Xiao Chen's hand touched the strange light barrier, energy ripples immediately appeared on it. In an instant, all the pressure vanished. Xiao Chen felt very relaxed as he slowly went through the barrier. Shoo! After 5 minutes, Xiao Chen stopped. Then, he landed firmly on the ground. When his eyes opened, he felt that his essence had become more vast and pure than before. Xiao Chen closed his eyes again and sank his consciousness to the purple qi whirlpool. He discovered that drops of purple essence qi were quickly dripping down from the qi whirlpool. This speed was much faster than his usual cultivation. This shocked Xiao Chen greatly. He even showed signs of breaking through. Odd, I did not cultivate at all and did not absorb any spiritual energy. How did the purple essence liquid appear? Could it be because of the light barrier? Xiao Chen guessed. Xiao Chen could not think of any other explanation, aside from this reason. Shoo! The essence liquid stopped dripping down after 5 seconds. Xiao Chen opened his eyes and stopped thinking about it. After all, this was a good thing and did not have any side effects. Xiao Chen intended to see what was going on with this floor. Outside the tower, Shi Hailong and the other upper echelons of the Heavenly Extermination Union waited at the floor of the Tianwu Emperor statue. They looked at the ancient desolate tower nervously. Within the ancient desolate tower, the jade pendant on everyone's chest was like a spot of light that could be seen through the walls, allowing the people outside to see everything clearly. Suddenly, an old man said, "Elder Shi, there seems to be someone entering the second floor." Shi Hailong focused his gaze. Indeed, a spot of light appeared in the space of the second floor. Unexpectedly, someone has already cleared the first floor. The pressure of the first floor is about 50,000 kilograms of force. I wonder who it is. In the past, the Thunder Emperor did not even manage to move this fast. Is this person insinuating that he will go further than the Thunder Emperor? It is hard to say, this is just the first floor. The challenges of each floor are different. Maybe he was just lucky. We cannot come to a conclusion so early. Naturally, Xiao Chen could not hear the discussion outside. He was currently feeling somewhat conflicted. In the second floor, there was also a faint light barrier above. The pressure that pushed them down before was no longer there. However, when Xiao Chen tried to fly, he discovered that there was a horrific suction force coming from the ground. No matter how hard he tried, he could not make both his feet leave the ground at the same time. After trying for a while, Xiao Chen could not succeed. So, he gave up and focused on the 20-odd sculptures in the middle of the floor. Between the first and second floor, aside from the change in pressure, the biggest difference was that there were many more sculptures here. The sculptures were the same size as humans. There were males and females, fist masters, bladesmen, swordsmen, and spearmen. Xiao Chen walked over and looked through all the sculptures. Eventually, his gaze stopped at a bladesman. This bladesman was wearing light blue battle armor. A saber with a serrated edge hung on his back. He had a rather genial expression but had an oddly unswerving and determined look in his eyes, making one not dare to meet them. Xiao Chen stood before the bladesman and looked at its face. The expression carved on it looked very realistic. It was like he was facing a real and living bladesman. The ancient desolate tower would not have a floor that was unsolvable. There was definitely a method to enter the third floor. The answer might be on these sculptures. Let's give it a try for the time being. Xiao Chen stretched out a finger and touched the sculpture's forehead. Ha ha, not bad, you are very wise in choosing me. Let's see your strength then. A carefree laugh suddenly rang out beside Xiao Chen's ear. He was astonished as the sculpture's eyes lit up. The bladesman moved his left hand and swept Xiao Chen's hand to the side. His right hand moved quickly and pressed towards Xiao Chen's forehead. Xiao Chen felt startled and quickly retreated. His figure flashed in the air, leaving behind afterimages. By the time Xiao Chen landed, he had discovered that he was in a chaotic space. The bladesman in light blue battle armor was smiling at Xiao Chen. The bladesman's sculpture, which Xiao Chen was looking at earlier, now appeared alive in this space. Winds blew, clouds churned, thunder roared, and lightning flashed in this chaotic space, but the surroundings looked empty. Xiao Chen placed his right hand on his saber hilt, stared at this person, and said, "How did you come to life? What is this place?" The moment Xiao Chen spoke, he felt that something was wrong. The other party was originally a sculpture, it had no concept of life and death. The blue-robed bladesman smiled and muttered, "I'm just a strand of will. I am neither alive nor dead. What you are seeing is just my will. My name is Bai Shuiye. I am a saber sage of the great Jin nation's Bai clan. 7,000 years ago, the Alliance chief invited me to leave a strand of will behind on the second floor." Xiao Chen now understood what had happened. Rumor said that once one reached martial sage, and their mental energy reached a certain level, a strand of will could last for hundreds of years. As for the will of a martial emperor, it would last for even longer. For his saber sage's will to last for thousands of years, it must be because of the ancient desolate tower. My cultivation realm is suppressed to the same level as yours. You just have to last 10 moves from me, and you will pass the test of the second floor. If you fail, this will be as far as you can go. The blue-robed bladesman slowly took out the serrated saber on his back. Then, he pointed the tip of the saber at Xiao Chen. When Xiao Chen heard what the bladesman said, his expression became serious. Although the opponent said that he had suppressed his cultivation to be the same, he was, after all, still a martial sage. He still had his martial techniques and experience. It would be difficult to last for 10 moves. Bai Shuiye looked at Xiao Chen and smiled faintly. Fight with all your might. Don't overthink this. Just make sure you don't leave any regrets behind. Here is my first move. Shu. Saber intent came out from the serrated saber. Bai Shuiye took 6 steps forward in the air. The tip of his saber kept moving towards Xiao Chen's left hand, which was holding the scabbard. This seemingly ordinary move became very sharp under the operation of Bai Shuiye and the support of his saber intent. These are all feints. His true aim should be to flick his saber up when I draw my saber, causing me to drop it. Xiao Chen's insight was very sharp. By the time his opponent was about to make his true move, his heart was already as calm as still water. It was like his opponent was not a saber sage but an ordinary opponent. The 10 moves did not matter. All Xiao Chen had to do was to defeat this opponent that had the same level of cultivation as him. Xiao Chen already guessed his opponent's aim. Although he was not completely certain, he was 70% confident of it. He was willing to gamble on his guess. Xiao Chen's right hand let go of the saber and made a very dangerous move. He did not draw his saber to counter his opponent's attack. Instead, Xiao Chen quickly swung his left hand to the back. The saber hilt appeared at his right shoulder, and the opponent's saber tip had already arrived at Xiao Chen's waist. Xiao Chen did not dodge. All his opponent had to do was to move his saber to the right, and he would be able to cause a heavy injury to Xiao Chen's waist. The situation was very dire. However, Xiao Chen had an extremely calm expression. In the time for a spark to fly, he grasped the saber hilt at his right shoulder. Xiao Chen drew the lunar shadow saber with lightning speed. He executed drawing the saber and moved his saber from top to bottom. The saber turned into a ferocious electric flood dragon, hacking towards Bai Shuiye's face. If the other party wanted to injure Xiao Chen severely, he would be hacked in half by this strike. Exchanging a heavy injury for his death would not make sense. Retreat. Bai Shuiye was very decisive. The moment he thought of retreating, his body had already moved back by 10 meters. This resulted in Xiao Chen's ferocious attack striking nothing but air. The electricity dispersed and turned into an electric light that lit the place up. What a quick reaction! Xiao Chen felt startled. According to his expectations, even if the opponent retreated, he would not be able to get out of the range of this attack. After that, he would take the initiative to attack, raining down a torrent of attacks. However, it felt like Bai Shuiye did not even have to think about retreating. His body simply made the appropriate reaction in an instant. This was a kind of muscle memory. Only after experiencing this thousands of times, living through tens of thousands of battles, could one accomplish this. Bai Shuiye looked at Xiao Chen, his lips curling up in appreciation. He said, "Not bad. Your insights are excellent. You are courageous and ambitious. You can determine my objective and courageously gamble on it. You even have thoughts of wanting to defeat me. Given your age, it is hard for you to have become this accomplished already. However, it will not be so easy for your saber techniques to reach me. Focus on how to block 10 moves from me first. Long-lasting spring water, growing warm then cold." Bai Shuiye stopped speaking, slowly beginning to move his serrated saber in a wavy fashion as screens of water appeared around him. A warm intent spread out in the air. Bai Shuiye, who was within the water screens, quickly headed for Xiao Chen. The ice of winter already melted to form the water of spring. It was so clear that the bottom was visible. However, even though the water looked warm, it was still cold. It was the uncomfortable situation of becoming warm while remaining cold. Bai Shuihe's saber technique exhibited such states to their extremes. It quickly changed between two different kinds of saber moves. Both warm and cold had different ways of dealing with them. It was something like Xiao Chen's dragon claw fist. It was both a fist and a claw, both requiring a different countermeasure. However, Bai Shuihe's technique was on a higher level. Xiao Chen's technique focused on form, but Bai Shuihe's focused on the state. It was even harder to deal with. If Xiao Chen made an error in judgment and moved blindly, he would get hit and be defeated immediately. Xiao Chen tried to quickly think of a countermeasure. He had never been this focused before. Saber Sage, a martial sage of the saber. Even though his cultivation was suppressed to Xiao Chen's level, there was still a clear distance between them. In the spring, when the ice had just melted, the so-called warmth was only relative to winter. However, compared to summer, it was still cold in the end. Xiao Chen's eyes lit up. He had finally figured out something. The words, warm, and cold, were just a ruse used to trick others. The coldness was relative. No matter how warm the water in spring was, can it be warmer than summer? Xiao Chen smiled faintly, trying to come up with a method to break this technique. After a while, the look of confusion on his face faded away, and a fierce purple flame set his saber ablaze. The qi whirlpool in Xiao Chen's body started to spin quickly. A pure lightning-attributed essence poured into his saber. The purple thunder true fire burned even fiercer, as if it went berserk. Break. The moment Xiao Chen struck out, the hot purple thunder true fire tore through the water before him. The air filled with the bubbling of boiling water and white steam. Dang! The purple flames destroyed all the cold qi. Xiao Chen's fierce burning flames completely suppressed the other party's state of ice, managing to push back Bai Shuiye. Rustling autumn winds, sweeping up fallen leaves. After Xiao Chen broke another of his move, Bai Shuihe's smile became even wider. He spun around his saber and followed up with his third move. A strong wind infused with a sense of loneliness quickly headed for Xiao Chen. Bai Shuiye moved within the wind with his sharp saber, chasing after Xiao Chen. This move was very ferocious. Even though it had been executed later, it arrived first. Its aura was similar to an autumn wind, one that the fallen leaves could not resist. This turned Bai Shuihe's once defeated move into something much stronger. In terms of aura, Bai Shuihe's even surpassed Xiao Chen. In fact, Xiao Chen was no match for him. Xiao Chen retreated decisively. His figure trembled as he executed the roaming dragon's 9 transformations. Then, he fused into the 9 cool breezes and moved back. This brat is good, he is very decisive. He monitored the situation very closely, and when it turned bad, he immediately retreated. He is not rash at all. Bai Shuiye praised Xiao Chen in his heart once again. His eyes swept through all the figures. Relying on his experience, he managed to figure out which was his true body. Furthermore, he managed to predict Xiao Chen's next move as well. He stepped forward, sent out a feint, and moved towards Xiao Chen's true body. Shoo! Shoo! The Xiao Chen's flickered. The first figure quickly merged with the 9th figure on the left. The number of clones immediately reduced. Bai Shuiye smiled to himself. This youth is very smart, but he lacks experience. There was no force behind his feint at all. His saber quickly changed directions and headed for the merged figure. Summer sky, burning everywhere. One might ask exactly how strong was the blazing sun of summer. It is the most blistering hot flame in the world. It can even make rivers dry up. It was also the most tyrannical flame in the world. No matter where one hid, they would not be able to escape from the light of the sun. It was easy to imagine the might of a move that had such a state infused into it. If it landed on the merged figure, the latter would probably be blasted to bits. Bang! As Bai Shuiye expected, the figure formed by merging the clones had an astonished expression on its face. It did its best to raise its saber and block. However, it still ended up blasted to bits by this powerful move. Seeing the figure vanish, Bai Shuiye revealed a lonely expression. He said, "In the end, this was his limit. However, I have taken advantage of this youth by using my experience to defeat him." "Uncle, it has not ended yet." Suddenly, the sound of laughter came from behind him. Bai Shuihe's expression changed slightly. He quickly looked back and saw a divine wukui tree flickering with scarlet electric sparks. The youth's true body that Bai Shuide had overlooked was dressed in white robes and was wielding a saber with both hands, carefully directing the scarlet divine wukui tree. Bai Shuihe's body reacted in an instant. Before he could even think about it, he was already flew to the side, dodging it. Xiao Chen had expected this, so the scarlet divine wukui tree started falling over to its side. The 200-odd meters tall tree fell over. Its top came just within a meter of Bai Shuiye. However, Xiao Chen did not stop moving. He shouted, "Explode!" Boom! The churning scarlet electricity instantly exploded. The shockwave blasted out, akin to a large area of effect attack. At such a close distance, no matter how fast Bai Shuihe's body reacted, it would still be swept up by the shockwaves. Bang! 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 Bai Shuiye took 3 steps back. His current cultivation was the same as Xiao Chen's, inferior grade martial king. He could not dodge such a strong move. He got struck by Xiao Chen's attack, and his battle armor got blasted into pieces. Blood leaked out the corner of his mouth. However, there was no anger on his face. Boom! Boom! Bai Shuiye neutralized all the remnant shockwaves the instant he brandished his saber. Bai Shuiye looked at Xiao Chen with appreciation and admiration in his eyes. He smiled, "Interesting, you knew that I can make out which is your true body. So you made plans for that. In the end, the merged body was still a fake one and your true body had not moved from the very start. When I was your age, I was not as accomplished as you. Just based on these 4 moves, you have already passed my test. However, I have one question for you. Do you still want to continue?" Xiao Chen smiled calmly, "Why not? It was so hard for me to meet a true bladesman. It would be too unfortunate if I gave up on this opportunity." Bai Shuiye wiped off the blood at the corner of his lips. The grin on his face became even wider. He said, "Have you thought it through carefully? If you are not able to endure all 10 moves, you will not be able to continue climbing the ancient desolate tower." Shoo! Xiao Chen held up his saber and a faint smile appeared on his face. He felt very excited. "It is as you said, I should not leave any room for regrets." "Ha ha! You have the making of a bladesman. Let's continue having fun with the next few moves then." Bai Shuiye laughed loudly and stepped into the air. He spun around his saber and sent out another extremely sharp saber technique, viciously attacking Xiao Chen. Boom! 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 The two started fighting in the chaotic space again. They fought with their strength, their wits, and their courage. Every move was very dangerous and brilliant. Their excitement rose as they traded blows. It seemed like they had forgotten that this was a test. Bai Shuiye had lowered his cultivation to be similar to Xiao Chen's. Thus, he could only rely on his experience and martial techniques to win. However, Xiao Chen's ability to react to the situation had exceeded Bai Shuihe's expectations. With Xiao Chen's ingenious saber techniques and exquisite states, he was always able to break the move at the crucial moment, and if he was not able to break the move, he would avoid receiving it altogether. While Xiao Chen endured the move, he would do his best to injure Bai Shuiye. They forgot about time, as well as their initial purpose. The smile on Bai Shuihei's face became wider and wider as time went by. Soon Bai Shuihei stopped trying to defeat Xiao Chen but rather started guiding Xiao Chen as a senior bladesman. As they fought, he would occasionally comment on the good and bad points of Xiao Chen's saber techniques. Naturally, the evaluation of a saber sage was something priceless. Xiao Chen gained a lot from this. He was enlightened on how to solve many problems that he had not been able to solve before. Outside the ancient desolate tower, Shi Heilong watched as many other spots of light appeared on the second floor. However, he remained focused on the first spot. He had a faint guess in his heart as to who had been the first person to arrive on the second floor. However, he could not be sure about it. Bang! Just at that moment, a figure was ejected out from the walls of the second floor. He seemed to be at a loss of what had happened. That person could not withstand the 10 moves and had failed in his challenge. He had then been ejected out of the ancient desolate tower and could no longer continue climbing it. Bang! 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 After that, another 3 people were ejected out of the ancient desolate tower one after another. They came back to the sculpture in a dispirited manner and continued watching the other lights within the tower with the others. The people at the side, who had not managed to qualify to enter the ancient desolate tower, quickly asked about the situation inside. However, the ejected participants smiled bitterly and could not be bothered to speak about it. Shi Heilong's eyes filled with doubt. He said, "Odd, there are already 3 or 4 people who have passed the test already. However, that person still has not passed yet. Have I guessed wrongly?" An old man at the side smiled and said, "Old Shi, don't overthink this. The person who had cleared the first floor so quickly was probably lucky. There has never been anyone like him in the past." "That's right. I have evaluated that person too early. It is just the first floor and yet I had already compared him to the Thunder Emperor of the past." As they spoke, another few people passed the test from the wills. More spots of light appeared on the 3rd floor. However, the person who was the first to enter the first floor still did not move. There did not seem to be any activity. Shi Heilong shook his head and smiled at the few people beside. "It looks like I have been overthinking things. Let's continue to observe. The number of people who have managed to break through to the 3rd floor is larger than before." In the 2nd floor, in the chaotic space Xiao Chen was at. Without realizing it, Bai Shuihei's initially solid body started to turn faint. Shoo! 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 Xiao Chen broke Bai Shuihei's saber technique again. The Wukui breaks the heavens and the Wukui moves heaven struck Bai Shuihei continuously, causing him severe injuries. Fu Si. Bai Shuihei vomited 3 mouthfuls of blood. The blue battle armor he wore already became very tattered and he looked miserable. However, his eyes still gleamed with excitement. Xiao Chen was in an even worse state than his opponent. His complexion was pale, as if he had been drained of blood. His white clear wind robes became nothing more than tatters. Wounds of various size covered his entire body, and blood slowly flowed out of them, dyeing his clothes red. "Thousands of years have passed, but no one has managed to push me to such a state before. In the end, I am only a strand of wool and cannot last for long. You win." Bai Shuihei revealed a lonely expression as he tossed his saber to the side, smiling bitterly as he did so. When Xiao Chen heard this, he sighed in relief. He had been approaching his limit as well and had already used all his trump cards several times. If Xiao Chen's opponent landed a few more attacks, he would probably be at his wit's end and die in this space. Bai Shuihei smiled and said, "Everyone who passes this test receives a reward. After 7,000 years, I have almost ran out of good things already. What do you want? I will still do my best to fulfill your wish." When Bai Shuihei heard this, he laughed. "You are extraordinarily greedy. This is the inherited martial technique of the Bai clan. However, you are the only person who has managed to push me to such a level after thousands of years. I will accommodate your wish, but remember, do not leak these secrets to anyone. Bai Shuihe flicked his finger, and light flashed on its tip. The light quickly entered Xiao Chen's forehead. Suddenly, Xiao Chen's mind felt as if it were filled with an enormous amount of knowledge. Before Xiao Chen could consider it, the space shattered. Xiao Chen opened his eyes once again and found that he had returned to the second floor of the ancient desolate tower. Xiao Chen's finger currently pressed against Bai Shuihe's forehead. Suddenly, Bai Shuihe's statue shattered and exploded. A formless power of will spread out from the second floor of the ancient desolate tower. It quickly pierced through the walls and filled the surroundings of the ancient desolate tower. Bai Shuihe's remaining will exploded, and all of the cultivator within 1,000 meters felt as if something had hit them in the chest heavily. They had no way to resist. They vomited a large mouthful of blood and grew very pale. A dull thud also came from Shi Hailong and the others. They did their best to suppress their surging blood for a long moment before they could calm it down. The few people wore grave expressions. After a long expanse of silence, someone asked in a quivering voice, "Someone managed to defeat the will of a martial sage." Although the wills had suppressed their cultivation to the Chalanger's equivalent, they were not at a disadvantage due to their experience and martial techniques. The only weakness they suffered was that they could not exist for a long time. However, they would have no problems executing a few hundred moves. Thus, it would be almost impossible to defeat one of them. For someone to withstand 10 moves, they would be a rare and precious outstanding talent. In the future, that person would, at the very least, reach the martial monarch realm. In the several thousand years of the trial of the ancient desolate tower's existence, aside from the Thunder Emperor, no one had heard of a challenger defeating their wills before. However, this very thing had just happened before their eyes. How could they not be astonished? Shi Hailong had a grave expression as he stared at a spot of light that flew to the third floor. He muttered, "I can't be wrong, I'm definitely right. There is no way I am wrong about this. It must be him, the first person who to arrive at the second floor." The instant the sculpture shattered, Xiao Chen's body automatically rose and swiftly headed for the light barrier above. This time, Xiao Chen paid attention when he passed through the barrier. He carefully monitored the qi whirlpool in his body for any changes. As Xiao Chen had expected, drops of pure purple essence liquid dripped from his qi whirlpool as his body passed through the light barrier. Dee-da, dee-da. This time, Xiao Chen took 10 seconds to pass through the light barrier, twice as long as when he passed to the previous level. Xiao Chen was pleased to discover that he had approached the bottleneck of inferior grade martial king. His essence surged, showing signs of breaking through to medial grade martial king at any time. It was no wonder everyone said that the ancient desolate tower was a miraculous place. Everyone fought hard for a spot to enter it. The rate of Xiao Chen's essence increase alone was the equivalent of 1 year of cultivation. To the peak geniuses, 1 year was more than sufficient to cast the others far behind their shadows. Shoo! Xiao Chen landed firmly on the third floor and swept his gaze through the entire place. Compared to the second floor, the third floor was smaller. Like before, drawings of many seniors decorated the walls, but no external force acted on them at all. There was no pressure from above or suction force from below. A light barrier still loomed above, but no one flew up to attempt passing through it. Zuo Mo and the others who had arrived earlier wore unsightly expressions as they examined a group of gravestones in the center of the room. "Look, another gravestone has appeared." It was unknown who made the announcement, but everyone immediately looked over. They clearly saw the words, "Here lays the white-robed bladesman, Xiao Chen, of the great Qin nation in eternal slumber," carved on the gravestone. A few people quickly looked back, and after they discovered Xiao Chen, they revealed the same expression. Xiao Chen walked over, feeling suspicious. He discovered that the various gravestones had the names of the outstanding talents on the third floor carved on it. it seemed extremely odd. There were even some ancient coffins laying quietly behind the gravestones. A dark atmosphere radiated from the gravestones, expanded throughout the entire space. Even Xiao Chen's name graced a gravestone. However, he was clearly alive. He felt strange, looking at his own gravestone. Xiao Chen asked Xia Xian, who stood to the side, "What's going on?" A grave expression shadowed Xia Xian's face as she replied, "I'm not sure." The moment anyone arrives, another gravestone and coffin appear. Someone already tried flying up to the light barrier above, but he could not pass through it. This is different from the earlier floors. Xiao Chen nodded and focused his gaze on his own gravestone. He said, "In that case, the test of this floor must have something to do with these gravestones." "I agree," Xia Xian responded uncertainly. Suddenly, she saw what Xiao Chen was doing and exclaimed in shock, "What are you doing?" Xia Xian saw that Xiao Chen had walked to the coffin behind his gravestone. He placed his right hand on the coffin lid and tried to open it. Xiao Chen's actions startled everyone there. They quickly retreated to the back of the room. There were too many strange things in his ancient desolate tower. There was an unknown risk with suddenly opening the stone coffin like this. The results could be problematic. Zuo Mo advised, "Brother Xiao Chen, how about investigating this first before deciding that? It is quite risky to open the coffin." Zhang Zimo was of the same opinion as well. He also felt that it was unwise. "Brother Xiao, let's wait for a while more. We might discover something else." Xiao Chen shook his head in rejection. "The answer is clear. It is in this stone coffin. You guys can back off first." Seeing that Xiao Chen had already made up his mind, the others said nothing more. Actually, they were also curious about what was inside the stone coffin. However, they were not as decisive as Xiao Chen. Bang! Xiao Chen sent out a palm strike and quickly retreated. Then, his right hand quickly grasped the hilt of his saber. The stone coffin lid immediately lifted, flying. Xiao Chen looked down and saw the contents of the stone coffin. His expression slowly grew doubtful, and he released his saber from his right hand. When the others saw the situation, they moved closer. They discovered that the stone coffin was empty, there was nothing inside. Odd. Why is there nothing? How is that so? It would be unusual if the coffin really contained something. The moment someone spoke, another person rebutted him. Bang! 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 The other stone coffins were all knocked open as well, but there was nothing in any of them. Everyone felt a sense of false alarm and relaxed. However, they soon remembered that this was the ancient desolate tower. They had to figure out a way to clear this floor and rise to a higher floor before they could obtain more benefits. Those who successfully passed the test from the wills would receive a reward. There were secret treasures, battle armor, spirit weapons, and even cultivation techniques. These were valuable items that were normally difficult to obtain. Even if they found nothing, the cultivation they obtained by passing through the light barrier was also very attractive. The crux of the problem now was not that there was nothing in the stone coffins but how to break through his floor to a higher level. Xiao Chen shifted his gaze between the stone coffin and the gravestone. Suddenly, Xiao Chen thought of an idea. He fell deep in thought, and his expression turned serious. "Xiao Chen, how should we clear this floor? What do you think?" Zuo Mo, Zhang Zimo, and the others asked as they stepped closer to him. After thinking for a long time, they could not manage to solve this riddle. So, they asked for Xiao Chen's opinion. Xiao Chen was very calm as he said softly, "It is obvious that this is a grave. There are a gravestone and a coffin. What do you think is missing?" The answer is very clear. The crowd muttered to themselves. After a while, their expression changed greatly. These were graves. There were gravestones and coffins. What was left? Naturally, only corpses remained. Without a corpse to bury, how could the grave be complete? Damn it! Could it be that we have to kill ourselves and slumber in these stone coffins before we can pass this floor's test? A cultivator cursed softly, feeling frustrated. Naturally, the benefits of the fourth floor motivated everyone. However, if one died in the process, that all would be for naught. Chu Chaoyun smiled and said, maybe, but it might not necessarily need to be our own body. When the others heard this, they were startled. A swordsman from the great Chu nation demanded angrily, Chu Chaoyun, what do you mean? Chu Chaoyun's expression remained unchanged as he looked at that person. Whether is it true or not, all we have to do is test my theory on someone. For example, you. Bastard. That person cursed angrily and wanted to attack. However, when he recalled Chu Chaoyun's strength, he felt fear in his heart. He quickly controlled his emotions and took a few steps back. Chu Chaoyun smiled faintly and said, is that all the courage you have? Chu Chaoyun's words may have been hard on the ears. However, when everyone thought about it, they felt that it made sense. There was nothing wrong with Chu Chaoyun's declaration. Whether it was true or not, all they had to do was to find someone to test it on. If that person died, passed through the light barrier of the third floor, and successfully revived, it meant that this string of thought was viable and everyone could imitate it. If that person died and did not come back to life, that meant that this idea was wrong, and they had to think of other methods. However, regardless of the situation, there was one very important thing: the person testing it could not be themselves. Shoo. The atmosphere immediately became strained and quiet. The silence was so deafening that one could hear a pin drop. When accompanied by the graves, the room felt gloomy and horrific. Some of the person who thought they were stronger than the others started to sweep their gaze through the crowd. It was as though they searched for an appropriate target. The atmosphere was initially odd already. Now, everyone's nerves were strained, and their hands rested on their weapons. Only the sounds of heavy breathing echoed through the dismal room. Everyone guarded themselves against each other. There was no way to judge who was your friend and who was your enemy. Someone who had once been an ally could launch a sneak attack, turning you into the first experiment. A previous enemy was worse. He might attack for no reason and sabotage you, turning you into the common target of everyone. It only took a small spark to cause an explosion. Everyone was so afraid, they would attack and kill each other at the first sign of trouble. Xiao Chen looked towards Chu Chaoyun, the person who caused this situation. This person was currently looking around interestedly and seeming utterly relaxed. The situation reached such a level because of an unconfirmed theory. Human hearts were too fickle. Xiao Chen shook his head and withdrew his gaze. He ignored these people and walked away, returned to the stone coffin. Xiao Chen examined the empty stone coffin and racked his brain. There was no such thing as an unsolvable situation in this world. Those the past had cleared the test and entered the fourth floor. This proved that there was a solution to this. However, what exactly was the test? This was hard to figure out. Xiao Chen had a rough idea in mind already, but he was not certain. Xiao Chen closed his eyes and entered deep thought. After a long moment, he opened his eyes. The hesitation and confusion in the depths of his eyes became resolution and decisiveness. Xiao Chen had made up his mind. While the group kept their guards up against each other or secretly plotted to use someone else as an experiment, he raised his leg and stepped into the stone coffin. Xiao Chen set the lunar shadow saber to the side and laid down calmly. After he closed the lid, he closed his eyes and started to take a nap. Bang! The sound of the stone coffin lid reverberated throughout the gloomy space. This improved the nervous cultivator's moods. Boom, boom, boom. The bang from the coffin lid sounded like a pistol firing. The moment the others heard it, several people took action against the targets they had marked. The place fell into chaos. No one wanted to become the first experiment, so they did their best to protect themselves. Soon, people became injured. Scarlet blood spurted into the air. This agitated everyone, and the fighting grew more intense. Seeing a group of people heading for her, Sha Xian felt depressed. She parried some attacks and tried to get away. However, someone else immediately attacked Sha Xian. It was unknown whether it was on purpose or simply because she was there. This drug Sha Xian deeper and deeper into the situation. She had wanted to retreat several times but was drawn back in. For these people to obtain one of the 20 spots and reach the 3rd floor, how could anyone display weakness? The difference in strength between them was not very obvious. In this situation, even Xiao Chen could not guarantee that he could escape this unscathed. Furthermore, Sha Xian was alone. It was rather difficult for her to get out of this situation. Zhang Zimo, Zuo Mo, and the others were in the same situation. They wanted to pull themselves out of the fight, but they were surrounded. They did not dare to make any big fatal moves. If someone were heavily injured, the situation would only turn more chaotic. They had no other ideas at the moment and could only protect themselves. Thing, thing, pang, pang. The sounds of weapon clashing resounded relentlessly. Within the group, Chu Chaoyun dodged attacks effortlessly. Occasionally, he sent out a sword chi with his finger, stirring up the crowd. From a spectator's perspective, one would notice that Chu Chaoyun would attack Sha Xian and the others as they managed to reach the edge of the battle. Bang! After a long time, an intense explosion resounded in the 3rd floor of the ancient desolate tower. The shockwaves surged, and the sound was ear-splitting. It was like a loud roar of thunder, suppressing the sounds of the conflict. Everyone quickly looked towards its origins. They only saw Xiao Chen's shattered gravestone and the stone coffin slowly sinking into the ground. After a while, a white figure rose into the air. Before everyone's astonished gazes, he flew towards the light barrier and slowly passed through. There were no obstructions. Xiao Chen went through the light barrier and arrived at the 4th floor. Everyone stopped their battle and started at Xiao Chen with stunned expressions as he left the room. How can this be? How did he go through the barrier? I did not see him do anything. Could it be that the barrier stopped obstructing people from going through? Someone expressed their suspicion. Then, he pushed off the ground heavily and crashed violently into the light barrier. Bang! The sound of his impact echoed throughout the 3rd floor. That person bounced back as fast as he flew up. There was an obvious red lump on his forehead. He grimaced and seemed to be in pain. Whoever said that the barrier is passable is wrong. It looks like Xiao Chen found the method to clear the test. I think I saw him enter the stone coffin earlier. Could that have something to do with it? A doubtful cultivator asked. At this moment, everyone had forgotten about experimenting on the other cultivators. After they calmed down and thought about what happened earlier, they knew that they were wrong. There is no need to say anymore. Whether that is the case or not, we will know after trying, Pei Xiaoxuan roared and stepped up to his own stone coffin. The others stopped hesitating and rushed to give this new theory a try. After all, Xiao Chen had succeeded. Pei Xiaoxuan lay in his coffin and slid the lid into place. When the lid covered the coffin completely, darkness overtook him. He unconsciously closed his eyes. Soon, all sound faded. Pei Xiaoxuan could only hear his own heartbeat in that boundless darkness. An irrational fear appeared in Pei Xiaoxuan's heart. His heartbeat started to slow, and his breathing became heavy. The fear in Pei Xiaoxuan's heart intensified. It was impossible to shake it. His beating heart grew weaker and lighter. Am I going to die? Pei Xiaoxuan thought in horror, how can this be happening? My heartbeat is slowing, and my breathing is becoming weak. That irrational fear from earlier had now become very real. It was the fear of death. If he stayed in the coffin any longer, he would certainly die. Oh no, my heart has almost stopped, and I can't breathe anymore. The shadow of death now loomed over Pei Xiaoxuan's heart. The fear was now beyond description, it penetrated the depths of his soul. Pei Xiaoxuan wanted to open his eyes but discovered that his eyelids were very heavy, he could not open them at all. No, I cannot die. I am an outstanding talent with unsurpassed strength. Even if I cannot clear this ancient desolate tower, I am still an outstanding talent in the great Tang nation. My potential is unlimited. I am only 22 years old and still very young. I cannot die yet. I cannot die in this ancient desolate tower. Such words echoed in Pei Xiaoxuan's mind relentlessly. In the end, he could no longer tolerate it, and he kicked over the heavy coffin lid. Fresh air poured in, and Pei Xiaoxuan sat up. He took in big gulps of air, panting heavily. His clothes were completely drenched in sweat. Pei Xiaoxuan felt like he had just seen the gates of hell. He rejoiced that he was still alive. Bang! Before Pei Xiaoxuan could get up, a strong force came from the stone coffin. This force ejected him from the coffin. Pei Xiaoxuan passed through the walls and landed outside the ancient desolate tower. He had only been able to climb to the 3rd floor. Hu Kai! Hu Kai! A few more outstanding talents could no longer hold back their fear of death and were tossed out, one by one, losing their qualifications to continue climbing the ancient desolate tower completely. In this life, the 3rd floor was the highest they could go. Shi Hailong frowned at the 7 or 8 cultivators who fell outside the tower. He shook his head and sighed. The test of the 3rd floor is the easiest and hardest to pass. If one can maintain a calm and resolute mind when death approaches, focusing on their desire to climb to the next floor, they can pass the test easily. Another old man standing to the side smiled and said, "That is easy to say but difficult to do. The feeling of death is exactly the same as the real thing. Most cultivators cannot maintain their calm in such a state. In the past, usually only 3 or 4 people could clear this floor. I even remember everyone killing each other once, and no one passed." The test of the 3rd floor measured the attitude a cultivator had towards death and their determination. Simply speaking, this was a test of a cultivator's state of mind. If their minds were not sufficiently cultivated, they could forget about reaching the 4th floor. Shi Hailong counted the number of lights who climbed to the 4th floor. He muttered as he smiled, "That's good, 6 people have climbed up. This is the best number we have seen throughout history." Old Shi, the first person, only needed 10 minutes to climb to the 4th floor. I guess that he is the cultivator who defeated the will on the 2nd floor. As the invigilators of the selection, they had already experienced and witnessed several rounds of the trial of the ancient desolate tower. They knew exactly how real the horror of this sensation of death was. Since the ancient times, none had managed to maintain their calm and pass the test in only 10 minutes. Shi Hailong squinted and smiled, "It is him. I have watched him since the start. Just wait and see, this person will surprise us. The 4th, 5th, no, the 6th floor will not stop him." Who is this person? Chu Chaoyun, Xiao Chen, Zuo Mo, Ding Fengqiu, or perhaps Zhang Zimo? The few discussed and pondered over it. However, there was no way to determine who it was until the last moment. Dee-da, dee-da. Xiao Chen's body slowly emerged through the 3rd light barrier. This time, he took 20 seconds to pass through the barrier. However, Xiao Chen obtained more than double the pure purple essence liquid than previously. By the time Xiao Chen landed on the ground, the purple chi whirlpool had exploded, and an abundant energy filled his body. Xiao Chen instantly felt like his blood churned and his strength had increased explosively. He rejoiced and muttered, "I finally broke through to medial grade Martial King." Because Xiao Chen cultivated a heaven-ranked cultivation technique and had absorbed so many natural treasures when breaking through to Martial King, his foundation was far sturdier than most people. It had become far more difficult for him to advance than others. However, this was a good thing. Xiao Chen's essence could compare to a superior grade Martial King while he was an inferior grade Martial King. Naturally, this was a benefit. However, there were downsides too. When it was difficult for a cultivator to raise his cultivation, the cultivator's mental state might become unstable. He might find it difficult to calm down and cultivate. One might even start to despise cultivating. They might consider cultivation futile if they could not progress regardless of how much effort they expended. Xiao Chen's mental state was very strong, and such a situation would not occur. The only downside was the slow advancement. If Xiao Chen's peers left him behind, it would be problematic. It did not matter while they were all martial kings or even half-step martial monarchs. However, it would become an issue when they reach martial monarch. Their essence would undergo a qualitative evolution. Essence would evolve into quintessence. One strand of quintessence was equivalent to 10 strands of essence. As long as a cultivator reached the martial monarch realm, they would be able to use a quintessence shield. No matter how heaven-defying one's essence was, it would not be able to penetrate a quintessence shield due to the difference in quality. It was like the difference between wood and metal. No matter how sharp and strong a wooden sword was, it would never break through a metal shield. Wood was wood and metal was metal. Such was the difference between essence and quintessence. However, the strange light barrier of this ancient desolate tower gave Xiao Chen a chance, as long as he could continue climbing the tower and leave everyone behind. Xiao Chen had to reach a height that no one else could reach. Then, not only would he catch up to the peak geniuses of his generation, he would have a chance to surpass them. The test in the third floor went like Xiao Chen had expected. Without a doubt, the gravestone and coffin represented death. What Xiao Chen had needed to face was his own death. The sensation of his breathing and heart stopping felt like he was actually dying. Furthermore, the embellishment of the stone coffin and gravestone made the test seem even more realistic. In other words, that was a true experience of death. The key to passing the test of the third floor was conquering this fear of death. Fortunately, Xiao Chen normally had a resolute heart. His desire to climb the ancient desolate tower was greater than anyone else's. Xiao Chen knew that he was behind in regard to cultivation. If he wanted to catch up, he had to climb this ancient desolate tower without stopping. This was his only chance at achieving his aims. As long as Xiao Chen could overcome this fear of death, he could pass this test, achieving a breakthrough. Xiao Chen collected his thoughts. He did not want to think about his experience in the third floor. There was no point in dwelling on thoughts of his death slowly creeping up on him. Xiao Chen looked around the fourth floor and studied it. The fourth floor was quite expansive. There were no changes to the walls. Ancient paintings floated in the air. The paintings unfurled themselves and displayed the danger zones of the world. TL note: the ancient Chinese paintings are painted on scrolls. They are normally rolled up when they are stored. This is the Scarlet Blood Flame Prison, and the 10,000 Poison Ice Cave, the 9 Layers of Purgatory, Deep Sea Battlefield, Ink Forest. When Xiao Chen saw the scenes depicted on the paintings, his expression slowly changed. It looked like this floor would test the combat prowess of a cultivator. Hu Kai. 7 people appeared from below. They were Ding Fengqiu, Zhang Zimo, Sha Xian, Zuo Mo, Mu Xinya, Chu Chaoyun, and Chu Mu. The test of death on the third floor eliminated the cultivators with weak willpower. From the initial 20 people, the test takers were down to 8. Suddenly, Ding Fengqiu looked at Xiao Chen and was stunned. He exclaimed, "You broke through." The other people were confused for a moment before they looked at Xiao Chen. Then, their expressions changed. Before entering the ancient desolate tower, Xiao Chen had merely been an inferior grade martial king. Although Xiao Chen had already reached the peak of inferior grade martial king, he had still been a distance away from a breakthrough if he cultivated normally. Even a genius at the very peak would require 2 months to break through, despite using all sorts of miraculous pills and practicing a peak superior grade earth-ranked cultivation technique. However, Xiao Chen managed to successfully break through to medial grade martial king in less than half a day. Just thinking about it astonished them. Xiao Chen nodded. Yup. I just broke through. Zhang Zimo's eyes revealed his doubts. Odd, our cultivation grew as well but it was not as fast as yours. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and did not pursue the topic. He had a guess about what happened. The first to pass the test gained the most benefits. Xiao Chen was the first to pass the tests of 2 floors. Naturally, he received more than the others. The 8 people stopped chatting. They focused on the paintings and started discussing them. The places in the paintings are the forbidden zones of the Tianwu continent. Could it be that we have to go through these forbidden zones before we can pass this test? Zuo Mo pointed at one of the paintings and said, "This painting depicts the danger zone of the Great Tang Nation, the demonic beast cave. Even a peak superior grade martial monarch would not be able to wander about unhindered there." Sha Xian said, "I believe the test of this floor would have something to do with these paintings. The danger levels of the places in the paintings are probably lowered. Otherwise, there is no point in our taking this test. We would just be chased out immediately." Chu Chaoyun waved his hand and collected the painting of the 10,000 Poison Ice Cave. He looked suspiciously at the painting for a while before he turned into a beam of dim light and entered it. The others started to carefully pick the location where they would have an advantage. After everyone picked a location, Xiao Chen made his decision as well. Xiao Chen pulled the painting of the Scarlet Blood Flame prison over. He looked within it and a huge suction force came from the painting. The suction felt like it was pulling in his soul. Xiao Chen did not resist with his spiritual sense, he simply went with the flow. Then, he turned into a beam of dim light and entered the painting. Boom. After Xiao Chen's body moved, he found himself in a desolate space. He looked up and saw that the sky was scarlet. Clumps of flaming scarlet clouds drifted about. A huge scarlet flame lotus blossomed in the middle of the sky. It looked very beautiful and strange. This place felt extremely gloomy and chilly. When Xiao Chen looked around in the 4 directions, he saw scarlet pillars holding the sky up in the horizon. The scarlet pillars were connected with the flaming clouds, seeming to form a large cage enveloping this entire space. It looked very grand. Xiao Chen muttered, "This must be the Scarlet Blood Flame prison. It is formed by Scarlet Blood Frost Flame. There is a Blood Flame Beast King on each of the 4 pillars. If I kill these 4 Blood Flame Beast Kings and break the cage, I should be able to pass this test." As for the Scarlet Blood Frost Flame, this was a ridiculously strong flame that Xiao Chen had no chance of defending against. On further consideration, Xiao Chen concluded that the creator of the ancient desolate tower would not be ridiculous enough to expect the test taker to be able to subdue the Scarlet Blood Frost Flame. Such an expectation would simply chase away test takers. The Scarlet Blood Frost Flame was a strange flame that drifted about the world. According to rumor, it was a demonic flame that an evil martial emperor-level cultivator of the ancient era had refined. When this cultivator fell, the Scarlet Blood Frost Flame had not been extinguished, it instead drifted about uncontrollably. No one could defend against it anywhere it went. Cities, even an imperial capital, were destroyed. The Scarlet Blood Frost Flame killed countless people and accumulated a large amount of vengeful spirits, resulting in an increase in its strength. The Blood Flame Beast was a strange creature formed by the combination of the vengeful spirits and the flame. It was neither human nor beast, demon nor fiend. Blood Flame Beasts were extremely strong. The other martial emperor-level experts that remained had tried to refine the flames or extinguish it. However, they failed. Having absorbed too many vengeful spirits, the Scarlet Blood Frost Flame had already developed a rudimentary intelligence. Furthermore, it was very strong. Ordinary martial emperor-level experts were no match for it. In the end, the last martial emperor-level expert alive had no other choice but to seal it beneath the great Jin nation's heavenly boat mountain. Then, it turned into this strange cage. Hu Kai. Hu Kai. Just as Xiao Chen was thinking, the scarlet lotus above suddenly started to move. Countless petals formed by flames drifted towards the ground. The flames were like scarlet blood, tender and bright. They fell like a rain of scarlet flower petals. The scene was very beautiful, a marvel of the world. Xiao Chen's expression changed and his figure flashed, moving backwards. Shoo, shoo, shoo. After the scarlet petals landed on the ground, they wriggled non-stop. Then, they formed blood flame beasts more than 2 meters tall. A quick count gave more than 200 blood flame beasts. After they manifested, they immediately rushed recklessly at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen focused on the blood flame beasts and gauged their auras. They were roughly equivalent to human inferior grade martial kings. The true blood flame beast was as strong as a half-step martial emperor, at the very least. It seemed like there was a chance of victory in this painting. It was not ridiculously difficult. The blood flame beast was made completely of scarlet yin attributed flames. Its eyes were just 2 black holes. There was a fist-sized white light flickering in its chest. This white light was the final soul mark of a vengeful spirit. The vengeful spirit did not have any memories, but it still retained its previous combat experience. Xiao Chen retreated. When he saw the blood flame beasts chasing after him, he muttered, "They retained their previous combat experience and are indeed hard to deal with. However, they are yin-attributed flames in the end. My purple thunder true fire should have some suppressive effect on it." This was one of the reasons why Xiao Chen selected the Scarlet Blood Flame prison. The Scarlet Blood Frost Flame was a yin-attributed flame. His yang-attributed Purple Thunder True Fire was a good counter for it. However, speaking of countering, the 2 flames were like fire and water. A large amount of water could extinguish fire, but a large amount of fire could evaporate water as well. In the end, they opposed each other. The stronger side would be able to deal a fatal blow to the other party and cause more damage. Xiao Chen sheathed his lunar shadow saber by his waist and moved his 10 fingers, summoning purple flames above them. As he fed them his essence, the 10 clumps of flames started to grow larger. Xiao Chen formed hand seals quickly. With the movement of his fingers, the 10 clumps of flames floating in front condensed into daggers. After he completed the hand seals, the daggers made of Purple Thunder True Fire finished forming. They looked very realistic, like daggers with purple flames on them. Life Bestowal Spell. Xiao Chen shouted and pointed with his right hand. The daggers immediately flew forward, drawing out a significant amount of mental energy from his sea of consciousness. The targets of the daggers were very clear. They were the white light on the blood flame beast's chests. After destroying the vengeful spirit's mark, the blood flame beast would collapse on its own. Regular weapons did not have much of an effect on that spirit mark. However, transformed by Xiao Chen's life bestowal spell in his spiritual sense, these flame daggers were the perfect counter to the spirit mark. Kai. Under the control of Xiao Chen's spiritual sense, the 10 daggers instantly found their targets, the white light. Black smoke came out of the blood flame beasts' heads. Roar. Miserable cries came from the 10 blood flame beasts that were struck. They stretched their arms out and tried to pull the purple flame daggers out. However, they could not do anything. Bang! When the daggers completely destroyed the white lights, the blood flame beasts turned into scarlet flames that scattered into the surroundings and vanished as smoke. It was indeed effective. Xiao Chen rejoiced. Although he used the Purple Thunder True Fire for the life bestowal spell and consumed a large amount of mental energy, the effects were good. He managed to kill blood flame beasts in one strike. It was worthwhile. Xiao Chen shifted his feet and activated the secret technique of the blood flame shoes. Moving at Mach 4, he retreated, putting a great distance between him and the blood flame beasts chasing after him. Shoo! Xiao Chen summoned another 10 clumps of flames and quickly executed the life bestowal spell. After the daggers flew out, another 10 blood flame beasts died. Xiao Chen continued to use his speed advantage to prevent the blood flame beasts from surrounding him. While he moved, he continuously flashed hand seals, casting the life bestowal spell without pause. The number of blood flame beasts started to dwindle. Xiao Chen was in no rush. As he killed the blood flame beasts, he familiarized himself with using the life bestowal spell on the purple thunder true fire. This was a form of cultivation as well, so it was not a waste of time. Furthermore, it stabilized his cultivation and no mistakes could be made. After 2 hours, not a single blood flame beast remained on the ground. Xiao Chen stopped, feeling slightly dizzy. This was the effect of exhausting his mental energy. However, it was something that Xiao Chen could manage. He closed his eyes and rested for a while. When he opened his eyes again, he felt much better. Hu Kai. The scarlet petals started drifting down from the sky again. Having learned from the previous occurrence, Xiao Chen did not give the petals a chance to land and form blood flame beasts. Roaming Dragon's 9 transformations. Xiao Chen executed the Roaming Dragon's 9 transformations and rose from the ground. He drew the Lunar Shadow Saber, and Yang-attributed Purple Thunder True Fire appeared on the blade. 9 figures danced in the sky and saber lights flickered. Xiao Chen reduced all the flower petals to sparks. Merge. The 9 figures combined into one, and Xiao Chen landed on the ground. When he saw the scarlet sparks filling the sky, he revealed a faint smile. Given this result, Xiao Chen felt much more relaxed. He withdrew his gaze and quickly headed for the Scarlet Pillar at the west. The Scarlet Blood Frost Flame made the Blood Flame Beast Kings at each of the Scarlet Pillars by merging strong Blood Flame Beasts together. It used them to resist the seal. As long as these 4 Blood Flame Beast Kings died, the cage would collapse on its own, and the seal would completely suppress the Scarlet Blood Frost Flame. With regard to combat prowess, the real Blood Flame Beast Kings were equivalent to peak superior grade martial monarchs. However, how much weaker they were in this painting was unknown. Xiao Chen moved lightning fast. In a few breaths, he arrived before the towering Scarlet Pillar. Shoo! Just at this moment, a batch of scarlet petals quickly fell from the sky. The lotus-shaped flame in the sky flickered, as though it knew what Xiao Chen wanted to do, and was very nervous as well. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and slowly drew his lunar shadow saber. He said, "The same move again." It was already useless the second time. The third time will not be any different. Xiao Chen pushed off the ground and soared into the air. He immediately split into 9 figures and executed the Wukui transforms to Qi, intending to crush all the petals into sparks again. Bang! 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 Yet, the petals that were about to land suddenly exploded. Then, they turned into blood flame beasts in midair. However, these blood flame beasts were much smaller than the first batch. Their auras were weaker as well. Xiao Chen's smile faded and his expression turned serious again. This scarlet blood frost flame did seem to have some intelligence. The rumor appeared to have some truth to it. Unexpectedly, the scarlet blood frost flame understood and adapted to the situation. It reduced the might of the formed blood flame beasts, shortening the time needed for them to form. This change allowed the blood flame beasts to be formed and hold back Xiao Chen. Bang! 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 There were too many blood flame beasts. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Chen's clones were blasted into nothing by the surging flames. I have to think of a way to break out of this encirclement. 200-odd blood flame beasts are just way too many, Xiao Chen thought. A flame burned fiercely in his right eye. Bang! A huge ball of purple flames containing the Purple Thunder True Fire origin flame surged towards the front. Under the fierce attack of the pure Yang attributed flames, a group of blood flame beasts in front of Xiao Chen was immediately destroyed. He succeeded in breaking out of the encirclement through this gap. After Xiao Chen landed, he sheathed his saber and repeated his previous strategy. He formed daggers using the Purple Thunder True Fire and started killing the blood flame beasts one by one. Shoo, shoo, shoo. The more Xiao Chen executed the life bestowal spell, the greater his mastery of it grew. The blood flame beasts vanished one after another. The large number of blood flame beasts, which would cause anyone else a headache, was nothing to him. After Xiao Chen finished this batch of blood flame beasts, the scarlet blood frost flame in the sky moved again. Countless scarlet petals rained down once more and another batch of blood flame beasts appeared. However, Xiao Chen did not show any impatience on his face. He smiled gently and said, "Are you trying to compete with me in patience? In that case, you picked the wrong opponent. Let's see who can last the longest, then." The petals rained down and a few hundreds more blood flame beasts formed. Xiao Chen's pupils constricted and he moved his 10 fingers. Then, he summoned out 20 clumps of flames in one breath. The flames quickly compressed into daggers. With the aid of the life bestowal spell, every dagger was a killing blow. Each dagger killed a blood flame beast, never missing its target. The scarlet blood frost flame intended to use an unending torrent of attacks to wear down Xiao Chen's patience. It wanted to throw Xiao Chen's mind out of kilter first, to wear down his combat prowess by the time he reached the towering scarlet pillar. However, the scarlet blood frost flame was truly picking a fight with the wrong person. Xiao Chen's state of mind was much stronger than that of other people of his age. Xiao Chen treated the attacks of the scarlet blood frost flame as a tool for tempering his life bestowal spell, to hone his use of the life bestowal spell with the purple thunder true fire. Furthermore, Xiao Chen believed that the scarlet blood frost flame could not continue this attack indefinitely. There would come a time when it would exhaust all its energy or need to rest for a moment. Time passed slowly. At first, Xiao Chen could control only 10 daggers. However, he now could handle 50 daggers simultaneously. Furthermore, the number of daggers continued to increase. Xiao Chen improved at a rapid rate. After Xiao Chen finished off another batch of blood flame beasts, his grin grew wider. He said, "What a great training ground. I won't be able to find another place like this again." Xiao Chen had incredibly strong spiritual sense, comparable even to the mental energy of martial monarchs. As long as he did not exhaust all his mental energy, he could use the lapse between the waves of attacks to close his eyes and rest. That was enough for him to recover most of his mental energy. Wang. After Xiao Chen finished off another batch of blood flame beasts, he closed his eyes again and waited. Even after Xiao Chen recovered all his mental energy, he did not feel the petals drifting down once more. Xiao Chen opened his eyes and looked at the sky. He saw that the scarlet blood frost flame had already become significantly dimmer. He smiled faintly and said, "How unfortunate. Just a bit more, and I'll be able to control 100 daggers simultaneously." If this scarlet blood frost flame had the emotions of humans, it would have vomited blood when it heard Xiao Chen's words. Its killing move was being used by Xiao Chen as a training tool. He even complained that it was insufficient. Xiao Chen pushed off the ground lightly and rushed towards the towering scarlet pillar. The pillar was more than 2,000 meters tall. It took him a few breaths to reach the top. The vast platform at the top of the pillar looked like it was stuck to the clouds. The very solid blood flame beast king on the platform had 2 white spots of light floating in its black eye holes. It watched coldly as Xiao Chen slowly approached. Xiao Chen looked at the blood flame beast king's chest and saw a circular scarlet object in it. The blood flame beast king seemed to be carefully protecting that spot, its only weakness. Xiao Chen could not help but frown. This behavior meant that Xiao Chen could not use the same tactics he had used against the hundreds of blood flame beasts. However, judging from the blood flame beast king's aura, Xiao Chen concluded that it was only equivalent to a peak superior grade martial king. He could cope with that. Xiao Chen landed firmly on the towering scarlet pillar. The clouds made of scarlet flames were as glossy as a mirror. The clouds stuck very closely to the top of the towering scarlet pillar. With but a weak jump, Xiao Chen would be able to touch the clouds. Shoo! The instant Xiao Chen landed, the Blood Flame Beast King turned into a scarlet flash of light and attacked him. The Blood Flame Beast King swung its arm and tossed a clump of scarlet flames at Xiao Chen. Ka-ca! Xiao Chen did not hesitate to draw the lunar shadow saber at lightning speed. Countless pure yang attributed flames quickly appeared on the blade. Bang! Boom! Xiao Chen quickly swung his saber. The expected situation of the scarlet flames splitting in half did not occur. Instead, they exploded and turned into surging shockwaves. The so-called opposites restrain each other was only a relative thing. When the two powers were equal, the restraining effect of both sides were the same. Pa! Xiao Chen smashed his right palm against the shockwave and was knocked back. The surging shockwave continued rushing at the Blood Flame Beast King. The Blood Flame Beast King was slightly stunned. It originally wanted to give Xiao Chen some trouble before taking advantage of the situation. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chen sent this bit of trouble back at it. Shoo! 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 The scarlet figure stopped and punched at the shockwave containing the chaotic combination of purple thunder true fire and scarlet blood frost flame. An alternating purple and red light spun as it flew at Xiao Chen again. The figures of Xiao Chen and the Blood Flame Beast King flashed on the platform of the towering scarlet pillar. The two flames with opposite attributes formed a chaotic clump of energy that flew back and forth between the opponents. Every time one of them struck the clump of energy back, they would infuse it with more energy. Over time, the energy contained within reached a frightening level. Then the clump of energy moved, and the scarlet clouds started to move along with it, ripples spreading throughout the clouds. Xiao Chen had a cautious expression. He did not dare be careless. He executed the Azure Dragon Cloud soaring art to the limit. Moving together with the clump of energy, he sent all sorts of saber techniques at the attacking Blood Flame Beast King. Bang! 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 As the chaotic clump of energy moved around, Xiao Chen and the Blood Flame Beast King both targeted each other's weak points. Arclight Chop! Xiao Chen shouted and sent out an ethereal arclight with his saber. A purple flame burned around the arclight. The Blood Flame Beast King, who wanted to attack Xiao Chen's side, could not do anything about it in time. It did not expect the saber chi that came from the front to change its angle and arrive at its side. Fu-si! The attack immediately chopped off the right hand of the Blood Flame Beast King. Roar! The Blood Flame Beast King roared in pain, but it did not stop moving. It opened its left fist and grabbed at Xiao Chen's left shoulder with its 5 scarlet fingers. You are seeking death. Xiao Chen snorted coldly. His left hand changed from a fist into a claw as well. An azure-colored dragon claw appeared and welcomed the attack.